everyone, welcome to Santiago's first equity webinar, hosted by Santiago ASB. My name is Tiana and I will be moderating this panel today. Equity is an important topic within our school and our community, and today we are allowing for a few students and teachers to share their own perspectives on equity and to answer any questions or concerns that you may have. Please remember to give your full attention and respect to today's panelists and hold off any negative comments. This is an environment of trust and learning created by our students on campus. So we ask that you enter this webinar with an open mind to what is going to be discussed. Our first panelist today is Morgan McKinley.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a senior and I'm representing the Black Student Union.
Our next panelist today is Melissa Nguyen.
Hi, my name is Melissa. I am a sophomore at Santiago and I am representing VSA, Vietnamese Student Association.
And next we have Madeline Nelson.
Hi, I'm Madeline Nelson and I'm representing the Filipino American Student Association and I'm a junior.
Next we have one of our teachers, Mrs. Ulrey.
Hi, I'm Purvi Ulrey. I teach science and AVID, also the GSA advisor and this year VSA advisor.
We also have Mrs. Moya.
Hi, my name is Miss Moya. I teach math at Santiago and I'm the Renaissance advisor.
And lastly, we have Mr. Sampson.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mr. Sampson. I am the activities director and assistant principal here at Santiago. Happy that we could get together for this conversation and looking forward to it.
Today, we're going to start off with some general questions about equity and equality. And our first question is going to be, what motivated you guys to be on this panel and share your perspective with us today?
What motivated me to be on this panel is because I'm always for helping educate other people that might have certain questions or just might not know what direction to lean towards when they're trying to learn more about new things and things that they don't know about. And I love having conversations with people about this kind of topic because there are a lot of issues or problems right now going on in society. And I think it's really good to help educate people on how to make everyone more comfortable and to help everyone become equal.
Yeah, a part of the reason why I joined is because it's a way to get an Asian American's voice heard, like in our school, but also I actually love to help others understand the different prejudices, whether it's religion or gender, and especially now race.
I agree with both Morgan and Melissa and how this panel is to help promote education within our community and our school. And it's just a way for our voices as students and as Generation Z to get our voices out there and start helping people understand how we feel.
That is great, you guys, and we're so glad to have everyone here. To establish some background, we're going to continue to the question, what is the difference between equity and equality?
For me, equality is everyone being treated equally, but equity is when we give those who don't have the same opportunities more so that it balances out. And basically, equity is what leads to equality.
I think a really good example of what equity is, well, first, equality is the act of everyone being equal no matter what. But an example of equity in our school would be like how if some people can't afford a computer or they just haven't gotten one or anything like that, the district provides the student with a computer so that they could be just as successful as everyone else. So it's basically just giving anyone who needs it certain resources to be at the same playing field as everybody else.
That's a great definition, and I definitely agree. Next, we have the question, how can equity be applied in both society and on our campus?
Well, equity can be applied in society by, I think it's evident that a lot of lower class communities don't have as much as middle class or higher class, and especially minorities, they don't get the same amount of resources and respect as other people. So I think giving those certain people the right resources they need in order to be successful in like the workplace or in school or just in society, in their life in general, that would be a great way to help everyone achieve equality. Equity and equality go hand in hand. So if we give people certain resources, then we can achieve equality at some point.
Yeah, exactly, Morgan. You hit it right on point. And one of the main goals of this panel is to help establish equity in our society and on campus. So with that goal in mind, we're going to move on to the topic of microaggressions. So the question with this is, what are microaggressions and how do these affect your daily life?
Microaggressions are basically subtle and normalized comments that people make within society. So microaggressions could be used or called as dark humor or jokes when people say certain things and they try to excuse it as either it's just a joke, but when these comments are generally made towards toward comments like putting people down, like they don't realize how these comments are belittling to people and how they make them feel afterwards because they just excuse it as just a joke. So they, for like an example that of a microaggression is when people don't really know me, they say that, oh, I don't look Asian or that I don't look Filipino, but then they try to excuse it and saying like, but you look Mexican or you look Chinese, and or they ask me where was I born or what really am I. So those are examples as microaggressions.
Yeah, I would also like to add with Maddie, or that like some microaggressions that I've noticed in the Asian American community is the mocking of our parents' accents or Asian American accents when speaking English. Like just last year in class, someone yelled, "Hey Ling Ling," and there were a bunch of people who laughed. But there's always a double meaning under it. And in a way, it insults a minority's struggle towards learning English. And when that happens, it's normally taken as just a joke. It didn't mean anything, but really it does.
Exactly. Just like Maddie and Melissa said, a lot of people use them as jokes and to just like brush it off, even though it's basically racism, just not as upfront, I guess. And people could be intentional or unintentional about what they mean when they're saying these things. But I know for my community, a lot of people hear, "Oh, you're not black enough," or you're so white. And obviously nothing's wrong with being white, but they're saying it to belittle what I actually am. And they're saying like, basically they're trying to mention that how I speak in a proper manner isn't black enough because black people are associated with being loud and extra and ghetto and stuff like that. So them saying that I act white is belittling the black community and praising another community instead of just seeing everyone's different, not one person acts a certain way just based off of their race.
Exactly. You three hit it right on point. Microaggressions are just another form of subdued racism, which is just horrible and which is something that we want to stay away from. What are some slurs used against your guys' communities and how are your communities affected by them?
A lot of people think that it's okay to say the N-word because they'll back it up by saying, "Oh, I didn't mean it in a mean way," or "It was just in a song. I was just singing it to my favorite song." Or they're like, "No, it just means like my friends, like, oh, that's hi to my friend." But really, usually slurs, well, all the time slurs have a way deeper meaning than how people might think that they're using it. And even if you're using it as a joke or in a friendly manner and there's no hatred behind it, there will always be hatred behind it because of the deep meaning of where it came from. Like the N-word that was used to belittle Black people. and for centuries. And it really hurt people then, and it can still hurt people now. No matter how you say it, that word will always make you feel a type of way.
Yeah, exactly. What are some stereotypes that your communities face?
I think a stereotype for a lot of Asian Americans, I'm pretty sure a lot of you've heard of this, is that all Asians are smart. And you're probably thinking, why Melissa? Being smart is a good thing, right? But again, there's always a double meaning behind these stereotypes because Asians got the stereotype of all Asians being smart from 1965, when the National Immigration Act allowed Asians who had special skills to come to America. And that was basically like the doctors, the nurses, the STEM majors, they all came in. And that's where we got the idea of model minority. But the thing is, American society started comparing us as model minorities to other people of color. So they're being like, oh, America's not racist because Asians were able to make it. So why can't African Americans make it, or Hispanic or Latino people make it? And in a way, it's a way to split minorities and create this segregation between races. But nowadays, for me, because of this idea that all Asians are smart, there's this upheld expectancy that I've always felt that, oh, I'm supposed to be associated with intelligence and being smart. And then sometimes the stereotype is used in the way like, oh, she's only smart because she's Asian. So this stereotype is used to pinpoint ethnicity as the main reason up to why and what I've accomplished instead of who I am as a person.
I agree with Melissa with the stereotype about Asians. All Asians are being smart. No matter what type of Asian you are or of Asian descent you are, you're held to a standard that not only within or not only without like outside of people who don't really know you and people who expect all Asians to be smart, but also within. So family, friends, they all expect you to be the highest standard you can be because you're Asian. But it also causes stress to us who are doing the best we can, but sometimes not always. Sometimes the best that we think we're doing is not always what other people think we could be held up to. Also, there's a stereotype that not only comes, like I said, from the outside, but is also within my own community, such as Filipinos are supposed to have a light complexion and are only supposed to speak Tagalog or our native tongue within the home. If you can even understand it and speak it. So my family was taught this when we first came to America because my grandparents didn't want their grandchildren to face bullying in school. So I'm a first generation Filipino, which says something because they came here, they arrived in America in 1977, and they still face that discrimination. And we're so scared for having the next generations be bullied in school for how we look, because we don't look American, or we're not originally from here. But most of my cousins, most of my family members are all born here. So so stereotypes like these can really damage a whole generation that we don't even know, and who have always been taught since we were younger, and how it affects how we think about ourselves and how we look to society.
I'd like to actually add on to what Maddie and Melissa said about how you become more conscious. It's more like deep rooted too, and it can really affect you, like stereotypes and racial slurs, like how Maddie said, like, and Melissa said that there's like a pressure of you having to uphold the stereotype that people have assigned to you. And I agree, but it's kind of the opposite for me because I can't act a certain way. And I'm pretty sure Maddie and Melissa can agree to that they can't feel like they can act their self because of these certain stereotypes and trying to be American. But sorry, where was I going? Okay. So basically, it's like I can't act myself because then I'll be upholding a stereotype. If I want to be loud just to have fun, I can't do that because then I'll be stereotyped as the loud Black girl. or I can't convey my voice a certain way or express myself because then I'll be stereotyped as the angry Black girl. So a lot of stereotypes are really damaging to people because you either can't act the way you want to act, or when you do act how you act, it's just like, oh, this is only because they're da 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 da.
Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. And not only are stereotypes used to divide minorities, they're also used to divide the people within those communities. And another thing that's used to divide our society is privilege. So what is privilege, and how can we ourselves work to identify our own privilege, as well as using it to help other communities in need?
Privilege is when you can do something that other people can't, just because of how you look or how you identify or express yourself. So if you can walk in the middle of the night or any time of the day by yourself, then without feeling scared, then you have privilege, because a lot of people can't do that, like girls especially. Or if you can walk or drive past a police officer without feeling scared for a second, then you have privilege, because a lot of people can't do that, like the Black community. And if you can walk around with the person you love, regardless if they're the same gender or not, if you can do that, then you have privilege without feeling like you're going to get attacked or shamed in some type of way. And if you have privilege, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's good that you have privilege. You can use it to your advantage. Like, you want privilege. You don't want to be oppressed. But if you have it and you recognize it, then you can use it to help other people that do not. Like, if you're a guy, then you can walk your girlfriends to their car, because that is a scary thing to do, to walk to your car by yourself. I've seen videos from Black Lives Matter protests where white counterparts will jump in front of their Black peers because they know that they won't get touched. They're using their privilege for good to help other people.
I agree with Morgan about how it's not a bad thing to have privilege and to know that you're privileged. But also, I think being able to identify your own privilege is very underestimated, because not only you are able to help yourself, but you're also able to help stand up for yourself and for others around you, such as like what Morgan said, the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think using this ability that you were born with is actually very lucky and gives you the ability to be listened by others. So helping minorities, joining VSA, FAFSA, or BSU is also a good way to help us get our word out and to be seen by others.
Yeah, and I really agree with what Morgan said and what Maddie said. And then I just want to take into account of what privilege we have as minorities, because as minorities, we have the privilege of having this culture that's really unique in a way. And then it makes up a factor of our own identity. So I think that's very special.
Yes, exactly. As minorities, we have privilege, and we also are denied privileges. And it's important to remember that privileges exist in different ways and forms between genders, sexes, and races. And identifying it can help positively impact your actions, like the vocabulary we use. So it leads into our next question, which is, how can we ourselves be inclusive with our choices of vocabulary, like gender-neutral terms?
I like to use the example where if someone's telling you a story and you don't know who they're talking about, you'll usually ask them questions like, oh, well, what did they say back? Or what did they do? And I think this is a good example of using they, them, because you don't know who the person that they're talking about. You don't know if they're a boy or a girl. You don't know what they identify as. So you say they because you just don't know. And I think you should apply that to your everyday life, because you really don't know what people identify as unless you ask them straight up. And if you could say they, them, we say they, them, theirs all the time in every sentence, every day we use those words. So it shouldn't be hard to say them when speaking to everybody until you know.
Also, I think asking people how they identify is not really an uncomfortable situation unless you make it an uncomfortable situation for them and for yourself. Because usually we or anyone you ask will be happy to tell you and even give a little insight if you just ask them. Also, asking is never really a mistake unless you make the person you ask, again, uncomfortable by using certain phrases like, what are you, instead of being straightforward and asking, how do you identify, and being polite to them. So, yeah, so also a good example for asking someone how they identify is also, how do you identify yourself? Because again, it's never really a mistake unless,
Is she frozen? Can I talk? Okay. So basically a lot of people they don't want to identify as either a boy or a girl. Maybe it makes them feel uncomfortable. Maybe they just don't want labels. Then they're just going to use they, them pronouns. And if you want everyone to feel comfortable, then you should be okay with it. And it doesn't affect your life in any way. It's their life. So you should be fine with how they identify themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Using pronouns like they and them not only prevent you from assuming wrong, but just help the person feel more included and, not like they're being discriminated against. And like Maddie said, you can always just ask. There's no harm in asking, especially if your approach is right and your intent is right. So moving on from that question, I think we pretty much covered the backgrounds of what equity and equality is. So we can go ahead and open the chat to any questions you guys might have. So just go ahead and feel free to ask. All right, our first question is, can you share a personal experience of a time you encountered racism or discrimination on campus?
This actually happened in middle school, but there was this girl who basically slanted her eyes and she was like, hey, look, I'm Asian. And for me personally, I didn't know what to feel. And like over the years, I've known to understand that's wrong, that's racist. But then I was fortunate enough to have a member in my class say, hey, no, that's racist. And for me, it's a learning experience for everyone because it opened my eyes into like, hey, society might not understand or different cultures as much. And it's also an opening experience for people who might not know, because now they know that what is wrong, what is right.
I've been blessed to not have faced racism, like hardcore racism up front, but I have experienced like microaggressions on campus. And one particular situation that has stuck in my mind is when I was walking with my friends around campus, and we got onto this kind of topic, I'm not quite sure, about people that you like and don't like. And one of them said, I don't like Black people, they're annoying, while I was standing right next to her. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she was like, oh, not you, Morgan, you're different. And I was just like, oh, well, I'm still Black, so that hurts. And you can't just say I'm different because you just insulted my people and myself because I'm Black. It doesn't matter if I'm different, whatever that means, but that really hurts because you just insulted me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And it's important to remember that regardless of whether it is direct racism or the use of microaggressions or stereotypes, it's still racism, which is something that we should definitely stay away from, because not only is it wrong, but it makes people feel hurt, like Morgan said, and like Melissa said, it's just not right. Our next question is, what inequities do different marginalized groups face amid the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think for like the Asian American society, we've actually faced more microaggressions and more violence towards the Asian community, whether it's calling COVID-19 the Chinese virus or being like, hey, you eat dog, you eat bat and whatnot. And so I think from COVID-19, it really highlights the racism and discrimination we have in American society.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Our next question is, do you personally feel that there is an adequate racial inclusivity and representation on our campus?
Personally, I think that that there could be more inclusive, in more inclusive groups, because Santiago, I think around the student body is also, or as around other high schools too in Corona, that we're kind of known as the white high school, and they say that there's not really anyone but white people that go to Santiago, but that kind of like puts us down, like FAFSA, BSU, and VSA down, groups like us who have tried to make a difference in our community, about how we're trying to bring our people together at Santiago. So I think, yeah, there could be more racial inclusivity.
Yeah, I agree with what Maddie said, but also it's not like the school's fault or anything like that. It's more of the area that we live in. It's not very diverse, I guess. There's definitely a majority. And there are other schools like in the district that do have like a lot of everything in each one of their schools, but it's definitely not the school's fault. It's just the people that end up enrolling there and the people that live in the area just aren't minorities, I guess, like that. And there could be like more representatives of like minorities in like clubs and stuff like that, but also it's like some people are scared to like try out to be a part of like major clubs or to like do something for the school. So it could be something that we can work on ourselves, but it's also just like the area we live in and there's not a lot of minorities.
Yeah, I really agree with Morgan and Maddie. And I agree there's no adequate like racial inclusivity and representation on our campus. But what I've realized is that over the years, we're working on it. Like just last year, Santiago ASB, they hosted a cultural performance day. And then there's the Bollywood events, but also right now, the equity panel. And just because like right now, we don't see as much racial inclusivity on our campus, that doesn't mean that we can't change, because we now know that there isn't as much inclusivity, but we're working on it. And I think the progress is what's really amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that. While we could have more racial inclusivity, I think that us as a campus, we continue to improve and to work on it. And we're doing way more things than we have in the past. And we're continuing to build upon that, to try to include everyone and make it feel more like a community. Our next question is, how do you encourage students to be civically engaged?
Well, I would say that they could join clubs, like me, Maddie, and Melissa's clubs. Like, even if you're not a part of the culture, like no one's stopping you from joining, because it's a really great way to learn more about other cultures and how you can help other cultures and just like struggles that they go to, so that you can learn how to help, and like just so you are more aware about what's going on, because I think awareness is like a really big thing. So yeah, you could join clubs, ask around, like make friends with people who might not look like you, just so you could you'll be more aware when you put yourself more in those situations.
Yeah, and I think students to be civically engaged, we first need to find out what our passion is in society. And right now, I'm pretty sure Morgan and Maddie all agree that being culturally aware and spreading this racial awareness is something that they're passionate about. So once you join these different clubs we have on campus and whatnot, you can become more civically engaged in our school system.
Yeah, exactly. Like Melissa said, there's so many, ways to become engaged and find your passion. And if you're not sure what it is yet, all of our clubs are open to anyone. They're not inclusive to people of that race or people of that culture. If you yourself or anyone you know is interested in joining, you can contact one of us or contact the clubs because we're open to everyone. And our goal of having these clubs is to promote and educate people on these type of issues. So they're not just, for people of this community, they're for everyone. Melissa, go ahead.
Can I also add, and maybe you might not find what you're passionate about, but we have this opportunity in school to start our own clubs and to get involved. So maybe you're not feeling, hey, I'm not equally represented in our school, so maybe I'll start a club. And that's just something to think about,
Yeah, exactly. We have lots of opportunities here. Our next question is, how is saying "I don't see skin color" seen as ignorant?
This question, I don't see skin color, to be honest, is ignorant because obviously we all see how everyone looks. And I mean, if you treat people equally, and with equity, we can, I think it's props to you that you don't see skin color, but others who say that, but then still make microaggression statements and still stereotyping different cultures and races. I think that phrase is very ignorant for them to use because you're not treating people with kindness and respect that you would want to be treated with.
I think an alternative way you could say is like, I see everyone equally. Like how Maddie was saying, like, if you see everyone equally, then good for you. But maybe not say like, I don't see skin color, because obviously you see skin color, but if you treat everyone equally, that's different than saying I don't see skin color. And
Yeah, exactly. You guys definitely hit that question on point. And also sometimes you don't even have to say anything and you can let your actions show for what you do and don't see. So our next question after this is, what are ways people can take action online regarding racial injustices?
I think that awareness is really key. And even though some people might see it as performance activism, like it's still good to get other people aware, because I know a lot of people, I like to post a lot of stuff on my social media about things that are going on around the world so that everyone's more aware. And I think if you really want to help just make just the tiniest of a difference, you can post things as well just to make everyone aware. Because a lot of people swipe up on my story and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And it's just like, if you're more aware, then that's just like more of a step up to equality, because now people are realizing that certain people do go through different things.
Yeah, exactly. Through utilizing your online platforms, is a great way to raise awareness, because when more people know about these issues, more people are likely to be educated or likely to care about the issue. So utilizing your online platforms, as well as just starting conversations with people just talking about the issue is the first step in solving the issue. Our next question is, how can we change the ignorance on our campus, and how can we educate our students to address pronouns?
I think, again, it all starts with being more inclusive with your surroundings and starting to make friends with people who are different from you. Also, joining clubs, like, again, promotes education. And for pronouns, if you're ever confused, I know there's a club on campus, is the, I forgot what they're called, but it's the LGBTQ plus, the club. So again, I think that there is no mistakes, or like it's okay to make mistakes in asking, and there's no harm done.
Yeah, and I think for ignorance on our campus, just lightly call them out. Maybe like, hey, this is technically not right, and then show them how they can change their viewpoint and stance. And I am going to be honest with you, I don't really know 100% all the time about pronouns, but it's the openness and willingness to learn. And I think I'm willing to like learn about pronouns, and everyone should have this willingness to learn if we want to keep our campus educated or change our ignorance on campus.
Also, it might be hard because there are some people who are very closed-minded and just like their mind is set on one thing and then how they feel. And usually it's really deep-rooted, maybe like in the home, that's how they were brought up thinking, or maybe they came up with their mindset on their own. But there's still some people that just wouldn't want to hear it. And at those situations, you just have to kind of brush it off and just be like, okay, well, that's just one person. You could still like have conversations with other people, but there are some people that you just won't be able to change their mind no matter what. And you can't really take that personally because I guess that's just them. And then for the pronoun situation, I think it's really good. Some people really just don't know. And some people like don't even know that other people like change their pronouns and stuff like that. And you as a like someone who is aware, you could bring it up in a conversation like while they're talking about someone, you can be like, oh, actually they go by she, her, or actually they go by they, them. So it's all about how nice you are about it too also.
Exactly. I agree with Morgan. And people can be, some people are closed-minded, but honestly, you just need to say, you need to promote education. Like you say what you need to say, like that's rude to say to someone. And you just need to back out gracefully. If they call you a snowflake, again, brush it off.
Yeah, exactly. And just to reiterate what Maddie said earlier, it is perfectly okay to make mistakes because mistakes are how we learn. And as long as we embrace and apologize for our mistakes, mistakes can be a good thing because that's how we learn. And that's ultimately how we're going to change our actions and not repeat the same mistake over again. Next, we have the question, in what ways can we stand together to overcome discrimination towards others?
Obviously it'll be very hard because this is a very deep-rooted thing in our world, but also it's all about like alliance and don't be a bystander. Like we've grown up from elementary school watching bullying videos about how people just stand by and watch, or there are the people that come by and say, hey, that's wrong, and help up the person who's like getting bullied, who's getting oppressed. And I think really if you're more aware about situations and you see something wrong that's going on, you could stand up with that person to make them feel like they're not alone. And then the more and more people that are helping out everybody, the less amount of people there will be that are the oppressors, I guess. And it'll also open some people's eyes. Like in some of the bullying videos, later on the bully sees that, oh, what I'm doing isn't right because more and more people are standing up against them.
Yeah, and I know from like an Asian American standpoint that a lot of Asian cultures, we like to stay safe, don't get involved or you'll get in trouble. But what I realized is that this generation, Gen Z, we're more open-minded and we're willing to learn. So through learning, we're able to stand together and overcome discrimination.
Yes, exactly. Like both of you said, through learning and not being a bystander, but helping those in need is how we can come together as a community to try and overcome discrimination. You know, it's going to be a long process, but those are the first steps in hopefully bettering our community, our society, and our campus. And it looks like our last question today is, how can I ask for someone's race, pronouns, etc., without coming off as offensive?
I don't know if I froze before in the middle of what I was saying, but I think that as I was saying before, it was like you ask the person, how do you identify or what do you call yourself? Being polite and not come off as aggressive and rude, like you're just asking them like, what are you, and saying stuff and saying comments like that, which makes someone kind of feel closed in and pressured to, and then they feel kind of stressed to tell you how they identify like they're in the wrong for feeling that way. So questions like, how do you identify, and being just more open towards them, then they'll come in, and even if you they'll tell you their perspective, and like, oh, like they'll tell you sort of their story behind it too.
Yeah, I agree with Maddie. It's all about being polite about it instead of just saying, oh, what are you really? Or like, what are you, and stuff like that. And you should just ask straight up, really. Just be like, there's a difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality. So maybe like figure out the difference between that. Like, for example, for me, like my race, I'm Black. My nationality, I'm American. My ethnicity, African. So you could be like, oh, what's your ethnicity? If you want to know, I guess, way back from the ancestors where they came from, then you'd be like, oh, what's your ethnicity? Instead of saying, what are you really? And just be polite about it, because, you know, like actions speak louder than words, and the way you like convey yourself will show your true intent behind the question.
Yeah, exactly. I think you both hit that question right on point. And if there's no more questions, just to kind of summarize and go over some of the important points, it's important that we remember that while equity is giving everyone the same tools, while equality is giving everyone the same tools, equity is giving them the tools they need to be successful. So we cannot have equity without equality, but both are just as important in our society. While microaggressions are subtle and normalized within society, our goal is to denormalize them and to learn the subtle microaggressions that sometimes we don't even know about, and to stray away from them, to use other vocabulary, to not make those kind of dirty jokes, and to just be sensitive towards who you're talking to, and just and hopefully to be educated on the kind of things we are saying. That way we can fray from offensive terms and language. And the goal is, when we denormalize them, the goal is to uplift people and create positivity in the conversations we're having instead of creating negativity. For privilege, the goal of privilege, or our goal of, trying to educate people on the privilege they have. We're not trying to hate on people or make people feel guilty for the privilege they have. We're trying to educate people and have people understand what privilege is, in order to help them use their privilege to help people in need. Because once we understand the privilege we have, we can understand those who don't have it. Like Morgan said, some people aren't afraid to walk in the middle of the night by themselves. And if we realize that we're one of those people, we can find ways to help people who are, and to make our community safer. Because ultimately, when those with privilege understand their privilege, our community will be safer with them helping those without. And with inclusivity, the point of using gender neutral terms is to make people feel more safe, more inclusive, helping build our environment, our community, where everyone feels represented. Using gender neutral terms just help people feel, more included. And that's just the goal of this whole thing. Equity is helping people be safe in our community, preventing people from feeling targeted or discriminated against, and just, we can do these through our actions, and through education, we can change how we act. Lastly, it's important to remember not to be a bystander. We can all stand together and help overcome racism through doing things like not being a bystander, like Morgan said, and just by using our resources that we have some great resources on campus, to help be educated, to learn, so we can prevent future actions. So it's just really important to remember these things. And if there's not any more questions, I think we can go ahead and conclude this webinar.
So really quickly, before we all take off, I would just like to publicly thank not only all of our panelists, but all those that have viewed not only with us, but will continue to view this. I just want to thank you. All of you were so eloquently and intelligently voiced your guys' opinions and voiced how your guys' personal stories have been affected by equity. And I'm just looking forward to future events like this that we can hold to help create a more inclusive and safe and equitable campus for all of our students. So again, thank you all. I applaud you all. It's been a great conversation and great discussion. So thank you. So with that, yes, we will conclude this webinar and looking forward for more to come.